Welcome to the Linux Spotlight. This show is dedicated to showing off the best thing about Linux, our community. This community is made up of developers, distro maintainers, YouTubers, and everyday users. Each one plays a vital role in our community, and the goal is to have a discussion with each individual about their journey into Linux and beyond. So join me now as we turn the spotlight on. Hello, I'm your host Rocco, and with me today, our special guest is Wendy Hill. Wendy, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I am doing excellent. I am so excited to get to talk to you. You have been a community member for such a long time, and people will know you by, you were a regular member on BDLL until somebody changed the time and then made it inconvenient for you to be there.
I wonder who did that.
Well, okay, so, that was me. But you have participated in other shows. You have been co-host on Destination Linux. You just recently were on a DLNxtend with Eric and Nate talking about Darktable. You're known as a photographer, but you're known as a photographer who not only uses Linux for your personal machines, but for your work as well. So that's what people would know you by. But if somebody was to come up and ask you, who is Wendy Hill, what would you say?
I'd say I'm a mom and a wife, and I love technology. That's kind of who Wendy is. She likes to do lots of different things.
All right, so tell us about your day job, and is photography a part of that?
Photography is all of that. So my main photography was food and product. And as of May, I took a step back from that for a little while, and I'm in the process of reworking my professional career, but it'll still be food related. I love food. I love taking pictures of food. And the best part about it, when you're taking pictures of people, you have this crunch time window where they need to get in. They've got other things to do. They've got a life. And with food or inanimate objects, I have all the time that I want to play with the light and set it up the way I want to. So for me, it's relaxing. I don't like to photograph people. It's too much work.
Well, that seems to be a great part of the job. If you can do a job and it's relaxing at that, and it's something you love, that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Do you have any other hobbies outside of Linux?
I have lots of other hobbies. We like to go camping and fishing and hunting and hiking. And then in May, I discovered I love weightlifting. So that is one of my new passions that I do almost every single day. I get cardio in because I have to. But I love to lift weights. I love heavy days.
Nice. Well, let's back up for a second. You said you like camping and stuff. What is your favorite place to go for that?
Anywhere in the mountains. So I like to be high in the mountains, surrounded by pine trees, where we can just have no cell phone service at all. Just the family, no connectivity to the outside world, and we get to just spend time with each other and enjoy the sun and trees.
Awesome. I love it. All right, so this newfound passion of yours in weightlifting, how did you come about that?
It came about because I didn't feel good anymore. I had gained quite a bit of weight after my last baby, and I was tired all the time. And my husband got me a 23andMe for Mother's Day. And when it came back, really the only negative thing on it was higher risk for type 2 diabetes. I was like, forget that. I'm done. I'm changing something. So I really focused in on research and fixing my diet and figured, well, muscle is the organ of longevity. So let's build it. And not only do I feel better now, I have goals to meet with weightlifting.
Nice. I used to do that years ago, but not anymore. Sorry. That's days in the past for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's fun.
Sure it is. All
Some
right.
people like to run. Just give me some weights and let me lift heavy.
Hey, more power to you. All right. You have an interest in photography, and your work is amazing. And I still use, even right now, I still have your pictures as my wallpaper of the mountains, and I go back and forth between the regular picture and the snow-covered mountains, and they are awesome. But what is it that sparked your interest in photography?
I've always been more on the creative side, but on the visual creative side. As someone who's dealt with dyslexia my entire life, writing was not my thing. It still is not my thing. So being able to paint with light and to create an image just felt right to me. And it started with taking some pictures of my kids, and I still do. Those are about the only people I photograph anymore. And they are so sick of being photographed that mom brings out the camera and it's hide. Or the only pictures I have of my youngest is he's pulling these funky faces and sticking his tongue out at me because mom's always got a camera.
Yep. And that's what kids do.
Yes, exactly. So it was just a love of wanting to create, and that medium really spoke to me.
All right. So you go, and we're going to dive deep into your photography later, I guess. But one more question real quick. How do you go from kids, taking photos of kids, to taking photos of food and getting into that?
It was something I wanted to do professionally. And when I was thinking about taking pictures of seniors and families and weddings are a nightmare. It just felt so overwhelming and not enjoy. I did my brother's wedding this summer, so I can speak from experience multiple times. Weddings are a nightmare, and those people that can do weddings, more power to you. I have no idea how you do it. So, Creative Live, they have different free learning programs on every day. Some are photography related. Some are, just public speaking related, a bunch of different topics. And on there, the one day I found, now I can't believe it. His name escapes me. But he was a professional that did commercial photography. And the main thing he did was product. And he was talking about it and the light and the way it hits it. And it just pulled me. And I said, that is for me. That is something that I would love to do.
Very nice. All right. Let me ask you. You use Linux. Do you ever talk about it to your friends and family? I mean, do they give you a crazy look when you talk about it?
A little bit. Like we've talked about it a little bit. My in-laws now run Linux. And when Windows 10 updated itself on their computer, they didn't want Windows 10. All they do is a web browser and play solitaire. That's it. So I know that they didn't need the basics, or all they needed was the basics. And I said, I can fix that. It's going to be different, but I wasn't worried about them needing to install programs or anything. So they run Linux. And when I get the call, because they've had the pop-up that comes on their computer saying that there's a virus on their Windows machine, I say, it's okay. You're not running Windows. We can just close that. Your machine's good. We're good. So it really helps me on my end because I can just say, nope, there is no virus on your Windows machine.
Yes. Yeah, very nice.
But for the most part, the rest of my family doesn't really care to hear it because it's change. They're not really interested in changing how that workflow goes. Though one of my husband's best friend, his wife is a teacher. And the program that she's using to run this topography table so they can move the sand and stuff on the table, and it shows up in this map, these lines on it. That system runs Linux, and she needs help with it. So I will be helping a teacher run Linux in her classroom.
That is excellent. I love it.
In the past, last year, I had some laptops donated to me, and I was able to teach a beginning Linux class at our homeschool co-op. So that was a lot of fun. I'd like to get some more computers so I can do that again. It wasn't quite enough to have an additional class as our co-op has kind of changed.
Right. Wow. That is awesome. That is what people should be doing. Spreading Linux wherever they can. Not, we talk about it a lot about, not shoving it down people's throats, but teaching people and helping people where you can. And those are perfect examples of what you can do and do it the right way. So.
Well, and it was fun. It was so fun to watch the kids as they took things that they did on their other computer or would ask, how can I do this? I do this at home. How do I do it here? And being able to show them those different things and just different open source programs in general. So none of them had heard of GIMP before. And we spent a whole class just playing with it and the different tools that it had and things that they could do on it, which they could go and install at home right now and not even have to change the operating system.
Yep. Well, again, it's about, there's people don't realize that there's other options out there. Like they see Windows and they think, well, that's all, that they don't even look for other options because it's like they don't know. So, yep. Excellent. All right. Wendy, this is something that's come up for me and questions that I've asked people in the last couple of weeks. If you had the opportunity, would you work in a computer tech related field, or do you think that would take the fun out of running Linux or using Linux at home?
I couldn't, and the biggest issue is I can't sit still that long, right? Even editing is hard for me when I have large edits to do. I've got to move. So I could not do that because my legs get tired. I don't even like to drive very far.
Well, I think that it's this thing that you always think about, like, oh, it'd be cool to have a job in some type of tech form. But we've been talking about it, and I'm like, I don't know if I would enjoy it. Not because I wouldn't enjoy the job, but I wouldn't enjoy then coming home and messing around. I think I would
play with it.
Yeah, it would take all the fun out of it. Wouldn't
be a toy anymore. It would always be work.
Yes. There would be no separation between work and home. All right. Before we get too deep into Linux, we have to start at your beginning and where you started with computers. So what was the first computer you used?
I don't even remember what it was. I was quite young. We got it as a Christmas gift, and it was one of those that ran DOS. So it had the green screen with the blinking cursor, and if you wanted to play the game, you had to type in how to get to the game. Gosh, that was forever ago. Those great big 5-inch floppy disks. Yeah, that was my first computer.
That didn't like get you hooked into computers at all? It wasn't like a fun ordeal or what?
I mean, it was fine. It was no big deal to play it, then we did some vague computer games in school, but none of it really grabbed me. It wasn't anything that really excited me. It wasn't until I found Linux that I got pretty excited about computers in general.
Okay. So your personal computers, one you could call your own, was that yours specifically, or was that like a family computer?
It was a family computer. I didn't have my own computer until I moved out and went to college.
And do you remember what that was?
It was a compact laptop.
Okay.
So I don't remember. It's floating around here somewhere. The kids have pulled like all of the keys off of the keyboard. So they play with it. It's
You
still
still
part
have
of the
it, though.
family. It just doesn't work anymore. Yes, I still have it. It's around here somewhere.
So from that point, when is the first time you hear about Linux?
It was actually not until Windows 10. And I was a pretty normal Windows user up until that point. I never really played games. So I wasn't too worried about that aspect of it. But I did start playing with images, and so I was paying attention to now how much RAM does the computer have? What do I need to be able to run these programs to make it all work? And I remember sitting down at my computer multiple times after Windows 10 came up, and there was updates going on, or things were missing, or things wouldn't work, and I was so frustrated. And that's when I did the Google search of alternatives to Windows, because I knew I didn't want a Mac. Macs they're too expensive for me, right? My husband will tell me your Dutch is showing when when I really get heavy into price shopping and comparison. So yeah, I knew I didn't want to go that route. I had hardware. I wanted to be able to use the existing hardware I have. So what could I put on it? And that is when I discovered this entire world of Linux out there, this whole new platform that I had no idea was there, that it could have been running years ago.
Right? Could have been.
Yeah.
Well, I think any of us could make that statement, no matter how far back you start. I mean, unless you started, when Linux first came out. But no matter how far you go back, you could always have run it earlier. Like I didn't start in Linux until, I don't know, 2003 or 2005. So, I mean, I could have been running it way before that. So
Yeah.
could
Well,
say
and
that.
I think I jumped in at a good time, because by the time I came into it, there was a lot of things that were just figured out.
Yep.
So I didn't have to worry so much about drivers and printer drivers and all of that stuff. By the time I came to it, it was a full-blown install and go operating system.
I tell you what, we have come such a long way that, like, if you started in Linux today, you would never realize how far we've come because of all of the headaches that have been ironed out, and we are so lucky right now. Yep.
The golden age of Linux.
There you go. So the first time that you tried Linux, you're searching for alternatives, first of all, with Windows 10. And so you didn't, I don't know, did you have any reservations of trying this? I mean, this was brand new to you. Were you like in fear of losing any data, or what was the deal?
No, I had a little laptop, a little HP laptop that I could throw it on. My biggest concern was, okay, so backtrack. Ever since I got my first Android phone, I'd been messing with the software, unlocking the bootloader, changing that up. So I was used to doing that in phone software type way. And on phones, you can screw things up and brick your phone, and all you have is this fancy little paperweight. Does nothing. So that was my biggest concern at first with installing it on the computer, is I didn't want this larger paperweight.
Right.
So I spent a lot of time after I found the one I wanted to install, really digging through, okay, how do I install it? How do I get into the BIOS? What settings do I need to change? And so once I kind of done all that back work, then it was like, let's go for it. Let's throw it on this laptop and see if I like it. And it didn't take long after putting on the laptop that I told my husband, the computer on the desktop, which we share, has changed. The operating system's changed. He's like, okay. Can I still do my billing? Said, yep, it's all there. You can still do your stuff.
Oh, wow. Just said it's changed. It's gone. Don't worry about it.
Changed. I'm the one that handles the technical stuff at home. So I'm the one who decides what is on the computer.
All right. So what was that first distro you tried?
The first one was Mint, and that's because the name was everywhere. And so it was the first one that I threw it on. There was another one called Cub.
Cub Linux,
went out about the same time. Yeah. So I tried that one too. And it was kind of fun just to kind of play with something that was different. For the most part, I was trying out several different distros, just saying, yes, I can install something. What does it have? What does it do? How do I work it? In the beginning, it wasn't so much about the distro of just trying to figure out how this thing works and what do I need to do to keep it working. How can I make sure that my husband, when he comes to do his billing for his job, isn't hollering at me, I can't make it work.
Well, I guess Linux Mint is everywhere, especially when you're searching for alternatives to Windows.
Yes. I don't know how they've done that, but it is everywhere.
Well, what were the good things that you, coming from Windows, trying it for the first time, what were the really good things that you thought were great? And what were some of the things that maybe kind of like, oh man, that's not so good?
The things that I found fantastic was it wasn't automatically updating on me. That was one of the biggest pitfalls I had when I made the jump from Windows, is I was so tired of being in the middle of something and having it go to update, or there was things that I had installed that Windows decided I didn't need anymore and was removing programs for me. So knowing that I've installed Linux, it's not going to update unless I tell it to update, and it's not going to be removing stuff that I want there, was absolutely fantastic. The biggest downside was, I guess, just learning new programs. It was the learning curve. It wasn't necessarily anything to do with Linux. It was just trying to figure out what programs that I needed. What were the names? How do you find them?
So you said it wasn't long before the desktop was turned into Linux, but how long did it take for you to say, we're done with Windows, we're going to Linux? A couple of weeks?
The biggest hiccup was actually trying to get it installed on my desktop. So because it had something in the BIOS, I can't remember what it was. It was something to do with one of the ports. I needed to change a power management setting for that in order to get Linux to install. And it wasn't until I spent nearly a week. I spent a week trying to figure out why in the heck was I getting this. Well, and it was weird. The text on the screen would just duplicate and look super funny. And yeah, I was having lots of issues. But once I changed this one little power management setting in the BIOS, everything was good to go. And Linux installed, and then Windows has not touched this machine since.
Yep. Nice. Well, I had a similar issue with my dad's computer. He has a Dell, and in order to install Linux on it, had to go into the BIOS and turn secure boot off, and do a couple different things because it just wouldn't work with those on. With those enabled, it just wouldn't work. So, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
That part is frustrating.
So, do you still use Windows at all?
No, I
Completely
don't use Windows
Linux
at all.
And you're not a Mac user. We already established
Nope.
that. So you are 100% Linux.
User. Absolutely.
That is awesome. I love it. So, I have distro hopped a few times over the years. And
really?
Yeah, maybe. And then I began to settle down. And there was a lot of shocked people about that because I didn't, even including myself, because I didn't think I would ever do that. But it got to the point where on my main machine, I wanted something that I could sit down and know that I didn't have to set it up before I had to do some work. So yeah. I have a test machine that I can distro hop on now freely, and that's no problem. The main machine, I've been running Pop! OS since April of 2019.
Nice.
Are you, I know that you participated in BDLL challenges before, distro challenges, but are you in that boat of wanting a stable desktop on your main machine?
Yeah, I want something stable. And part of that is photography work, right? I need to calibrate monitors. That takes a long time for that process to happen. For two, my husband gets grumpy if he starts up the computer and he's like, holy crap, the desktop environment's different again. How do I get to XYZ? So that's definitely a bit of a deterrent in and of itself.
I could see
My
that
first
being a
stable
bad thing.
one, yeah, yeah, it's always a surprise to him what's gonna happen when I turn on the computer. It was like that for a while when I was finding my home, which started out as Karora. I absolutely loved it. It had everything I wanted. It had newer versions. This is pre-Snap, so before Ubuntu had that kind of stuff, and I wasn't a big fan of Unity. So I'd found a really happy place there, and then when they discontinued it, that left me kind of in limbo again.
Yep.
And I ended up landing on Manjaro. I've been on Manjaro for just over a year now.
Nice. What desktop environment?
KDE. I am such a Plasma fan. I love it.
Well, I'm sorry. Plasma is really, really nice. If you want to customize something, there's no better system than that. So.
And that's what I like about it. My customization needs are fairly simple, but there's a few things that I absolutely love where setting windows to open at a certain size in a certain place across my 3 monitors every single time. I love that. And I love the ability to set something so it's on top all the time. So if I'm working and I need a specific window to always be visible, I love that I can do that super quick on Plasma.
Yep.
It just seems to click for me. It fits.
Well, it's very powerful, and it offers those unique settings that what you're talking about. It's not just a mishmash of different settings. It has specific settings that are very valuable to certain people. Like you will use those couple
Yeah.
settings and maybe not a whole lot else. But for that experience, it's awesome.
For that. And I love the fact that I can change the wallpapers on any of the screen individually. It doesn't have to be the same across the board.
Yep, definitely a good thing. I wish GNOME had that. Sorry.
They're getting there, hopefully, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
With the Ubuntu
Well,
backing.
they've been getting better and better. It used to be that GNOME used to break everything. You do an update and it would just break. That's just the way it was. And you don't hear so much of that anymore. Yeah, once in a while, but not like it was before. So they're getting better.
I started with GNOME, so.
Well, it's definitely been my choice of desktop environments for the last, even before Pop OS. I would go back and forth. But me and KDE always had this love-hate relationship that I loved it for all of the features it could give you and everything it could do for you. And then I would just scream at the desktop because of, this would crash or this wasn't right. Or it was so frustrating because it was so good and yet so bad for me at times that I was like, where GNOME, I know what I'm getting. I know that they don't offer the functionality that KDE does, but I know what I'm getting. So there's that.
So it works.
There you go. And that's what you got to do. If it works for you, then that's what you should run. And GNOME is no better than KDE. And I don't think for the person, for each specific experience, I don't think either is better for anybody. It's what you choose to use.
Right. Well, I wouldn't give my in-laws Plasma. I have them on Mate.
That's a good choice. Very good choice.
I mean, it looks so similar to what they were used to. And I mean, it fit perfectly for them. That's the wonderful thing about Linux and the different desktop environments that we have, is you can pick one that not only works best for your system, but works best for your workflow or who you're giving this laptop to, and it needs to work for them.
Right. Now, do you do a lot of, well, I mean, obviously you do the tech support for them, but do you,
Oh,
I
yeah.
guess my question is there a lot of, is there many times that you have to fix things for them, or is that just a good to go distro?
Yeah, not anymore. When they were running Windows, I did. I did a lot of fixing, and now I just every time we go visit them, I run an update, and they never know that it happens.
So you haven't had to fix many issues for them.
Nope. Nope. Other than when we went from the last stable release to the current stable release, I updated for them. But other than that, the only thing I have to do to their computer is run an update.
Nice. Very nice. That's good to hear.
Fantastic.
Because the last thing you want to do is put Linux on and then have things break for them or them not be able to do things. And then you got to not only fix it for them, but you got to explain why it happened. And, it gets goofy.
Yes. Well, and then from a distance, because they're 3 hours away. So trying to do that over the phone and where they're very much non-technical, trying to explain where I'd need them to go or what does this say. And yeah, that's all frustrating for both parties. So
For
it's nice to
both.
just be able to say, here you go. It works.
Yep, definitely. So we're going to take a little detour here. Have you ever attended a Linux conference?
I haven't. I would love to. They look like so much fun. The biggest issue is they're all so far away from me.
Yep.
I'm here in little Idaho, and everywhere is a drive.
Well, see, I mean, you're very fortunate if there's a Linux conference near you. Because, I mean, even for me, there really isn't a Linux. I think Self was, if I was driving, it would have been 8.5 hours. So it's not like it was a close drive. And like I said, I think you're fortunate if you have them close to you. But you just
Yeah.
gotta do it someday, Wendy. You gotta just make the trip because I've only went to one and I love it. Absolutely loved it.
Well, and you guys look like you had so much fun. I was jealous. I was jealous watching everybody have a good time itself, wishing that I could be there too.
Yep, we did. We had an awesome time. You should definitely put it on the bucket list to do. Just saying.
It is on the bucket list, without a doubt.
So for your computers and your software, everybody loves open source. I mean, I don't know too many people that don't like open source, but there are differences of opinions as far as how enthusiastic people are about it. Some people are like way overboard and are like preaching to people they should use nothing but open source software. Some people are in the middle. Where do you fall into that category?
I fall into use what works. What do you need to get done and use the best tools for the job? So right now, pretty much almost everything I use is open source, but there's a few things that aren't, but they're the right tools for the job. And so as long as you can get your work done, if I can't get my work done, it doesn't matter if it's open source or not. I can't get my work done.
Right. Yes, exactly. And I am right there with you in that category because I love open source software. And it's great, like you said, when most of what you can use is open source software. But there are certain things that maybe for me in this specific instance are not going to work the best, where a proprietary software
Yeah.
might. And if that's the case, you should definitely use what works.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I started using Linux years ago because of the customization, because of flexibility. And after you meet the community and you see how giving they are and how just plain wonderful most of the community is, I say that that's the best reason to run Linux now. What drives your passion for Linux?
It would probably be the customability now. And then the community is so much fun. It is so fun to talk to other people about this. Linux is massive. Anywhere from servers to desktops and all different use cases and software and the different varieties in desktop environments, all the things that you can do with it, and hearing how every person can individualize this larger arch of Linux into their daily lives is really cool. It's
Yes,
really cool.
I agree. Um, it's something that you don't see very often. And I don't know. I mean, even like you look at Windows, there was, when I used to run Windows, there was one forums that I would go to, Windows 7 forums, I think it was. And that was a decent community. But for the most part, Windows doesn't have a community that isn't even close to the community in Linux, where people are so willing to help you and so enthusiastic about running whatever distro they're running. And I think that you don't get that anywhere else. It's pretty awesome.
It is so fun to start a thread of what does your desktop look like, or what are you running today? And it is amazing how many responses you can get almost immediately, because everybody's excited to share what they're doing. And you
Yes.
can get some fantastic ideas just looking and reading about how somebody's changed something, or, oh man, I can use that. How did you do that?
Well, the discourse forums have been a huge resource. People are posting, and you, like you said, it doesn't even have to be wallpaper or desktop. It could be anything. Like, how do I do this, or how do I do that? And people just jump right in and try to help out. And it's like, it's amazing that you have so many people that think like you and then are willing to help. I mean, just take the distro challenge, for example. How many times do we run into issues on the distro challenge, and the people in the Telegram groups are like, hey, well, if you do this, it'll fix that. And it's amazing to watch. Yep.
It's almost every week. And the best thing about it is, because this community is so large and there's people that have played with this various different distros, everyone has their own knowledge background that's a little bit different. So when someone has a question on a different distro, somebody else can say, hey, I've run that before. I know how to fix that. I've learned through experience. This is how you get that one to work.
Yep. And not only generic topics like a specific distro, but you got guys like Eric Adams who are creating videos on, and I love his channel because it's showing like a specific problem, like really specific of, hey, I have this specific NVIDIA driver and monitor and it's not working, or something to that effect. And this is how I fixed it. And those are awesome, because I guarantee you there are people out there searching for that exact problem, and it helps them fix it. Yep.
Absolutely. It would have been so helpful for me years ago if somebody would have said, hey, I have this motherboard and this is how you this is how you get Linux installed.
That's it. But sometimes you don't find them till after you've fixed the problem yourself, and then, it's like, oh yeah, there it is.
That's my luck anyway. Yeah.
Well, okay, so the Linux community is pretty awesome, but for a long time there was a bad reputation that went around in the Linux community, and people not being so friendly to people just asking regular questions that are considered, I would say, noob questions, for lack of a better term. Okay. And people would get upset and just basically be nasty to them. What has been your experience in the community since you've been in it?
I have never had a bad community experience with Linux. Even when I first started and said, hey, I'm wanting to run Linux, and posted in a forum, what should I run? Everybody was always very nice to me. So I'm really glad I didn't have any of those negative experiences in the beginning, because I could see how it could turn some new people off. They're excited, they're trying to learn, and it's not helpful.
No, I mean, think about it. Had you been looking and searching for alternatives to Windows, or even your motherboard issue or whatever, and somebody's told you to go RTFM or something like that, I mean, would you even have continued in Linux?
I don't know. I might have, just because that I was so mad at Windows at the time. Like, I might have been, whatever, I'll figure it out myself. And I can understand, for some people, they're tired of answering the same question every single day, right?
Yep.
I mean, you can do things to help yourself by doing a quick DuckDuckGo search. But for the most part, when you're first diving into something like this, you don't even know where to start. It is so overwhelming when you do Windows alternative and all of these different distributions come up and you're not sure what a distribution is and you're not exactly sure what all these desktop environments are and what they do and how to use them. It can be nice just to have a friendly voice say, okay, breathe. Let's start from the beginning.
Yep.
And figure it out.
That is so true. And it's not just doing a search for it. There is also a thing of how to search and what terms to use.
Yes.
And if you don't know those terms, if you're just typing in like, I don't know, monitor's not working or something like that, you're liable not to get the answer you want. But if you're good at search terms, then obviously you're going to get a better result. And I think a lot of people fall into that category where they don't know exactly what to search for, so they're not getting the answers they want, and then they ask, and then hopefully they get the right answer.
Well, and I think that's where my enjoyment of research comes from is, all the different search terms put in, I guess, made it easier for me to figure some of that stuff out. But yeah, search terms make a big difference.
They do.
What you get.
And I was never good at searching for stuff I don't even know if I'm good at searching now, but I was never good at searching when I first started. So all right. Wendy, do you do any coding or scripting?
I've played a little bit with some HTML, but I've played a little bit here and there with some coding, but it's never been anything that has caught me for a long time. And it's probably one of those things that get antsy. I need to go do something else. To sit down and write one of those long scripts, there's just no way.
Well,
no way.
Most people will, I won't say most people. Some people will be like myself or maybe Ryan, and will like cheat and copy and paste from other code. And
you have a patchwork code then.
Yeah, pretty much. So do you have maybe a favorite script or program that you can't live without? Like maybe something you've even downloaded to run?
Well, the stuff that I couldn't live without is the stuff that I use day in and day out for photography. Even, the stuff that I do for fun. Those are all kind of vital parts of how I use my computer anymore. The first one would be Display Cal, and that's the one that calibrates my screen so that the color is accurate. Doesn't do you much good to edit an image if your screen color is inaccurate. And then you send it to a client, or you sent it to be printed and go, holy crap, why does that look so bad?
So what does it take to calibrate your monitors?
So it takes that software that I use, and then I also have, I was wondering if it was right here on my desk. It's not. A little piece of hardware, and it sits on the screen and communicates with the software. So it's reading the colors that are being shown to it on these patches, sending that information back to the program, and it's making adjustments so those colors are true.
Wow. And
how long does that take? Hardware-software combination.
How long does that take?
It's been a little while since I've done it. It's right around an hour and 20 minutes per monitor.
Really?
Yeah.
And you have 3 monitors.
But I set it to really high, yes. But I set it to really high calibration standards. So I'm wanting it to do a whole bunch of patches and really make sure that it's as precise as it can get it. You can do faster runs, but that's just what it takes for my settings. It used to take 2 hours. I had an older piece of hardware, and that one, it took it much longer to do it.
Wow. There's got to be a better way, Wendy. There's got to be a better way.
See, that's one reason why I kind of can't distro hop, because I'm like, holy crap, to sit down. As long as my main screen is calibrated, then I can do work, because it's my main screen that has the best color. My two side ones are just for workflow purposes. So as long as one gets done, I'm good to go. But I prefer to have them all done so color is consistent across all three monitors.
Yep, definitely. And yeah, that's a good reason not to distro hop. Yes.
Yeah.
So normally I would go into software and your workflow right now, but seeing as how you just got done talking about your calibrating of your monitors, which is your photography setup, basically, let's go into your photography. When did you get your first camera?
I got the first camera that was mine 2004, and it was a film SLR. So yes, I started with film.
Yeah, I don't want to go back to that. Sorry.
No, yeah, I'm glad I don't have to go back to that either. And then I've got my first digital camera when we were expecting our first child. And so I knew how many pictures I took with film. I knew how many more pictures I would take having a new baby in the house, and didn't want to pay for all of that film to be developed.
Yep.
And so for Christmas before she was born, we bought us as a family gift a digital camera. And that was what got me going.
I still have up in a shoebox up in the closet a couple rolls of film that we took from years ago, and it's not developed, and I've never done anything with it. I wonder what's on those right now.
Yeah, it's probably gone bad, and they're probably all black now.
Yeah, they're probably nothing.
Downside of film, right?
What are you gonna do? All right. Your first camera. Do you remember what the first picture you took of it was?
It was winter when I got that one as well, and so it was the stream in my aunt's backyard that was covered in snow and ice.
A nice winter scene.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, you do professional photography work. And we talked earlier about you getting into photography itself and where you started. I'm assuming that it was your love for photos that brought you to that point where you wanted to do it professionally.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much fun to create an image. Why not be able to have fun creating an image and get paid for it?
Yep. Agreed. That's a great answer. So what style of photographer do you think you are, as far as like, and I'm not talking work-wise, I'm talking your personal preference. Like me, I'm not a professional photographer, but I do like taking pictures of landscapes,
Yeah.
whether it be a winter scene or mountains or whatever. What style of photographer would you consider yourself?
I like contrast. I mean, I really love to play with light and shadows. And so that's where the tabletop work comes in. Landscape photography is so much fun. The hardest thing about it is you have to be at the right place at the right time to get this perfect lineup of where things are. And if I had an endless travel budget, that's what I would do all of the time. I would be out scouting locations and waiting for the perfect time and have just all the landscapes. But unfortunately, I don't. And the next best thing for me is to get to make those fun, contrasting looks at home with dishes or as a still life. So
Right.
some people like things a little brighter, and I do have some work that's a little brighter, but I really like the depth and the contrast in an image.
Well, what do you think is the hardest thing in taking a good photograph?
Get the light right. Do it right in camera. That's the hardest thing. Learning how to do it right in camera so that you don't need or need very little post processing.
I don't have that perfected. Well,
And it's a skill that needs to be learned. It takes hours of, if I do this, how does it make it look? If I do that, how does it make it look? And figuring out what you like the best so that you can have it exactly the way you want it when you take that picture. And still life gives you that ability. You have nobody that has to leave. Food is a little bit harder because food dies on the plate. So it
yep.
looks really good right after it's cooked, and you have to be ready to shoot it as soon as it's ready. And there are certain things you're not cooking all the way, especially vegetables. You do not want to cook vegetables all the way and then plate them because they'll look like crap and nobody will want to eat them.
This is true. I never thought about that. No, this is true. You wouldn't want to do that.
No, if you're taking a picture of spinach is great because it's one that I've done a lot. And you want cooked spinach, it hits the pan and it comes out. That's pretty much it. You do not want to leave it in any longer than that, or you're going to have this gray wilted mess, which, if you're cooking it for yourself to eat, it looks fine. But if you're looking at the still image that doesn't move and all of your focus is on it, that's where food can look really ugly really fast.
Yes, thinking about dinner yesterday, the broccoli that I ate wouldn't have made for a good picture. I can tell you that.
Was it a little mushy?
It was a little mushy. That's the way I like it, but I mean, it's like, no, that definitely would not make a good picture for somebody on the front of a box. No way.
Yes, it tastes good. That's the way you like it, but that's not how you would present it in a form that's not changing, that can be viewed for a very long time and picked apart. You have to be very careful about how you cook things.
So you cook things and you have to be ready in order to get that right shot. How long do you set up beforehand, like picking out the background or the table setting or that kind of stuff?
It depends on if I'm doing something fun for me or if I'm doing something for a client. If I'm doing something fun for me, it can be a lot faster just because I'm playing. I'm having fun setting things up. Yeah, guys, we'll have dinner here in just a minute. Mommy's got to photograph that. And we have had those occasions. Yes, I know I made this beautiful brisket. It looks absolutely fantastic, but Mommy needs pictures of it before you get to eat it.
I don't care if the house smells good or not. You're not eating until we're done. Until we're done taking
You can
the
wait
photos.
5 minutes. You can smell it for 5 minutes more.
Nice. All right. But if you're taking something for a client, it could take a lot longer because you want it to have that perfect
I'm
background.
looking for specific things. And a lot of the times when I'm working with clients, I'm given free reign. That there's some specific things that they're looking for, so it matches their website or whatever. So there's those constraints that I'm working in. But for the most part, I'm the expert in that, right? So I wouldn't be telling somebody who's wiring my house where to put the wires. That's kind of their thing.
Some people do.
Some people do.
Some people do.
But so, as long as I know what they're using the image for, because sometimes you need to plan for, okay, there's text that needs to go on this image. I need to leave space in certain places. So knowing all of those details makes a difference in how you're setting up the image to start with.
Yep.
And if I'm doing food, I will take a test shot. So I will make sure that everything is looking good inside my frame before I finish cooking and plate the food. Because once the food is plated, it's got to get done. That there's no time to mess around anymore.
What was the last food photo that you took?
Deer heart.
Deer heart.
Yes.
Nice.
You asked. That's the honest answer.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, is this something that you guys went hunting and that's how you came about it?
My husband got the deer and I requested the heart if he got a lung shot. So he did. Deer went down. The heart was beautiful and he brought it home to me and I prepared it and ate it.
Nice. Very nice.
Yes. And of course took a picture of it before because
of course,
it's one of those cuts of meat. Right. So it's one of those cuts of meat that most people don't eat. And it's so beautiful, I think, plated. I think it's one of those cuts that's just, it's pretty.
Okay.
Spoken as a food photographer.
Yeah, there you go. To each his own. So, what do you think is the most rewarding thing about photography?
The most rewarding thing would, for me, if it's personal stuff, just being able to enjoy the outcome. And if I'm doing things for others, the rewarding thing is they now have this image that fits their purpose. So it can either help grow their business, or on cases where I've done stuff for charities, it can advance that charity's goals. We are so visual, and you cannot underestimate the power of a great image when you're getting your message out there. And so knowing that I've taken something that I've enjoyed doing, I've enjoyed creating, and now it can be used to make their lives better, can make other people's lives better, is just fantastic.
That's excellent. Yeah, that is absolutely awesome. Love it.
I love the fact that you're still enjoying wallpapers that I took. So, I mean, that's a joy to me, knowing that you still love them.
If I could share my screen, you'd see it right now.
Awesome.
So, I recently interviewed Brent Jerva, and he's a fellow photographer. He's also on Jupiter Broadcasting. But he does all of his work on Linux, just as you do. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Shane Milton's another photographer who does all his work on Linux as well. I think it's amazing that you're able to do everything you want to do on Linux. But were there any struggles to get to that point, or maybe how much was the learning curve going from programs that you used to use on Windows to programs you use on Linux?
I mentioned this on Destination Linux Extended, but the hardest part was Darktable was so overwhelming for me at first. I kept hearing and reading about how great it was, but every time I'd open it up, you have this huge list of modules, and what did they do? And they're named different, and their functions are different. And so it was just trying to figure out, how do I make this work? What does this mean? Almost like the beginning of just coming into Linux, but it was more, there are way too many buttons here. I don't know what they all do.
Well, it sounds similar to, like I used to edit all the videos that I do in Kdenlive, and then I went to and switched over everything to DaVinci Resolve. And the hardest part was, I know what I want to do. Like, I know I can do this in Kdenlive, and I know what I want to do. How do I do that same thing in DaVinci Resolve? And obviously, it's the opposite. You were going from, I would assume, I don't know, what products were you using on Windows?
Corel. I was using the Corel line of products.
So you were going from there to free and open source software, and I was going from free and open source software to DaVinci Resolve, which is not, but I still think for its purpose for me and what I do with it, I think it's the best tool. But that to me is the amazing part, that you guys can do everything you can do on open source software and still get it done. Still do.
Well, and I think we all use Darktable, and if you were to look at one of the pictures that we like the best, if each one of us was to pick one of our favorite images that we've ever shot and put them side by side, they'd all look way different, even though we're using the same software, because we're all different photographers and we shoot different things.
Right.
So,
and you have different perspectives, like you were talking about light and shadows and everything, and some other photographer might be concentrating on something different,
something else.
Yeah. And I think it's more of a personal expression.
It is.
Yep.
It's like painting. That's why I said it's like painting with light, because no two paintings are the same.
Right.
No two images are the same. You have different views, different angles, different lenses. All of the stuff that you choose in this wide variety of things that goes to make this one single image affects how it will look in the end.
So what camera do you use? What is your go-to camera?
Right now, my current main camera is a Nikon D7200, but Nikon is discontinuing their ability for third-party people to fix cameras, and I don't think Nikon will be my next camera.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a
I tell
sad
you
thing to
what,
say.
that is happening more and more. I'm hearing, like, in different areas. I mean, not just cameras, but like John Deere is making it harder and harder for people to work on tractors.
Yep.
Same. I don't. I mean, I guess I understand the idea of that, as far as it's their software and they want to kind of keep a hold of the money they have from that. But I just, for the customer and the consumer, I just can't see how they would do that.
Well, and it's not only that, you have this piece of hardware that you need that is part of your, even if you're a hobbyist, it's part of the things that you enjoy. You want it fixed in a timely manner and back to you. If everything has to go straight back to Nikon, what is the amount of time that it is going to take for that product to be fixed? How much more is that going to cost me to have that product fixed?
Yep.
So I prefer to support companies that allow me or others to fix the devices.
So do you know how they're doing it? I mean, are they making it that the parts are not available, or is it just, how are they making
So
it
it
so that?
switched over January 1st. So January 1st, there were retailers that were authorized and they could get official parts from Nikon, and now you can't.
So
It's not
now
available anymore.
they're not offering the parts for
Right.
you to do that.
Yep, you cannot have an authorized fix done somewhere else with authentic parts for your camera.
And this is why people like open source software. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hey. All right. Well, you mentioned that you were on DLNxtend, and so you talked about Darktable. So
Yes.
is that the most important piece of open source software in your opinion for photography, or are there others? Or tell us about the open source software in general for photography.
So there's two main programs that somebody can take a raw image and edit it in. So you have your camera can take two different types of images, typically a JPEG, which is a compression of all of the information that the sensor gathers at the time. So what you get is pretty much what you get. Everything's been compressed, and if the image is too dark, it's really hard to lighten it up without it just looking really funny. If you shoot in RAW format, it doesn't compress that information. You have all of the data that the sensor gathered at the time that it took that picture. So you can lighten shadows and still have that information in the shadows if you take it into a program like Darktable or Raw Therapy. Raw Therapy is set up way different than Darktable. And if we're going to talk about opening up a new program and trying to figure it out, Raw Therapy just makes me go, I don't understand. I can't get it to look the way I want to, because the tools are set up different, and some of the different algorithms and the processing makes the pictures turn out different.
Yep.
So you can pick one. If you like Raw Therapy, then use it. It is still an extremely powerful piece of software. Or if you like Darktable, then use it. It's what I prefer. I love some of the things that you can do where you can pick certain colors or use a brush to highlight certain areas, and then you can make changes to only a specific part of that image. That's great for getting rid of color cast. Somebody's underneath a tree and you kind of have like this light green going across the side of their face. Well, how do you fix that? Because it looks bad in your finished picture. And
Right.
so you can only highlight that area where you've got the color cast and color correct there using several different modules, make their skin look nice and even. You can't do that with the JPEG. And raw therapy and Darktable have just amazing ability to help you make those tweaks and those changes, and you're not paying the Adobe Cloud Creator fee every month.
Yep.
Anybody from the hobbyist who's just getting started to the professional has access to professional level software in Darktable.
That is awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
So I know you had mentioned on that episode that you take all of your photos in RAW format.
Yep.
Now, can you only edit RAW photos? Because I'm not a photo person, except for just wanting to take a few pictures. Can you edit RAW images in other programs, or is that something that is a format that only RAW Therapy or Darktable can do?
You can do a little bit in GIMP. The problem, if you install the plugin for GIMP that adjusts RAW, you can do your simple tweaks there and then it pulls it into full GIMP and you can't mess with those settings anymore. You'd have to start over from the beginning. So if you're wanting to do raw editing, those are the two programs that I recommend doing it in, because you can always start over from the beginning. You can always open up, no, I decided I wanted a little bit lighter here, and you're still working with the raw data of that image. So you're going to have the best quality manipulation without losing things, especially in your shadows and highlights. That's where you don't want to lose detail. It adds complexity to the image. You want that stuff there, I guess, depending on what you're doing, but you don't want to lose all of those fine details
Right.
that you could if you're just making the changes from a compressed format of that image.
Well, for me, I take my pictures with my phone, so I don't have a camera to take great pictures with. I try to get the best shot I can, and I had said to Brent when he was on Linux Spotlight, I try to get like a cool shot, and it just never turns out right. Like, I'll have this sunset or something like that, and I was like, man, that would make a really cool picture. But I guess it's the photographer, because like it just never turns out the way I want it, like to highlight what I'm seeing. Like I see what I'm
Some of
seeing in
it
my mind.
is, yeah, and some of it is the photographer, and some of it actually is the hardware. So the best camera is the camera you have with you, especially if you're taking just everyday life events. You're saving this precious moment. It doesn't matter what the camera is, as long as you can capture that, it's perfect. But as far as hardware goes, for stuff where there's a lot of contrast, the ground is much darker than the sky. I like to take a double exposure. I want the ground set using certain settings, and I want to take another picture of the sky using certain settings, and then I can blend them together in a program like GIMP. So that gives me an accurate representation of what was actually shown when I was there.
That is way over my head, Wendy. I can point and click. That's what I can do.
I have there's a lot of the landscape stuff that I've done that it's usually 2 to 3, sometimes 4 images blended together to get an actual representation of what it looked like at that time. Because our eyes can capture so much detail in the dark and so much detail in the brightness, and we can blend it all together. Our cameras don't have that sensitivity. And so to compensate for that, sometimes we need to take multiple images and then put them together so it gives that look of real life, even though you couldn't capture it that way with just one image.
Yeah, like I was driving home today, and it was the sunset, and the sun was just dropping over the mountains, and it's one of those, it wasn't just a red sky, it was like a purple red sky, and it was
Oh,
just
yes.
fantastic. But I'm thinking to myself, I'm driving, I said I should stop and take a picture of that, but I'm thinking to myself, it probably won't turn out the way I see it. Like it was so purple, and I'm like, nah, it probably won't turn out the way I see it. Who knows? All right, Wendy.
It happens.
What is your workflow like as far as the software you rely on? So you talked about Darktable. You talked about a few others. But if you're going to install, say you're going to reinstall Manjaro KDE, what programs do you install to say I need these programs?
So in order, I'd go ahead and do my install, and then the next thing I do, I would open up the AUR and I would install the drivers that allows me to use OpenCL, which lets my graphics card do some of the processing work when I'm in programs like Darktable. So I want that all set up first. After that, I would install DisplayCal, go ahead and get monitors calibrated. The next thing I need would be Rapid Photo Downloader, and that's what I pull all of the video and images off my SD card with. And one thing I love about that program is it does both the video and pictures, but you're renaming. You can set up your entire file structure from that program, exactly how you want things named, exactly the order you want them to go. So I know that when I click download, where to find things and how to be organized.
Yep.
All of my images or videos have a job code to them. So even if it's family stuff, I could say camping trip, or like when I did my brother's wedding, it says Levi's wedding. That way I can keep track of where things are. I have them arranged by year. And then within that year, I have a month and a job code for that month. So if I'm doing multiple things within the same company, I'm doing multiple things for the same company, it's all together. And I don't have to go digging for that stuff. And Rapid Photo takes care of all of that for me. Then after that, I've got my raw image. It would be pulled into Darktable. And then if I'm doing any layering, I'd pull it into GIMP.
Now, you had mentioned before about having setting, if you pull raw images into GIMP, you would have to start over. Now, are you able to make changes then from if you do things in Raw Therapy and then go into GIMP? Are you able to make changes to the previous things?
In Darktable, I can. You can always start from the beginning. You can always tweak and change and move things around and still have your original data. So you can always go back to base 0. You can always turn off modules, lessen them, make them more. In GIMP, not so much. If you apply a layer mask to GIMP, so I only want one thing in a specific area to show up, and then I need to merge all the layers together so I have one layer instead of 5, so I can make some edits to that. Say I've got some cleanup work to do. I apply all that stuff and then realize, oh crap, that didn't work. I needed to make changes to that layer that was 3 up from there. If I didn't save it before I did the merge down, then I have to start from square one.
Yeah.
So that is where GIMP is very destructive. And I know that may not make a lot of sense to some people. Especially who've never worked with multiple layers and merging them into one. But that's where GIMP gets frustrating.
Well, I have worked with GIMP, not with photos, but with layers of images, like whatever logos and trying to create logos and stuff.
Yeah.
So I do understand that that can be very frustrating. It was very frustrating for me. And actually, Michael Tennell was one of the guys that, has always said that feature is the worst thing about GIMP. It's a great piece of software, but the whole destructive thing is just the worst thing about it.
And they're working hard on fixing that now. The heal tool.
Yep.
You can make a new layer and then do corrections with the heal tool on that new layer, and it pulls from all the visible layers below it. So that if you want to, for me, dust is my enemy.
Yep.
Doesn't matter what I do, it always shows up on certain things. Black products, black stuff is a nightmare for showing dust. And that is what I do a lot of the time in GIMP is I'm going in there, I've finished editing, I'm going into GIMP to clean up dust on stuff or little lines that I don't want to show up. And because now that the heal tool I can use non-destructively, it makes it super easy for me to have maybe 3 or 4 layers below where only certain parts of those layers are visible. And instead of having to jump back and forth before that, I was like, oh, what part is this layer on? What part is that layer on? Crap, I can't get that fixed. Where did it go? And trying to figure it out. That is a nightmare. Instead, I've got one layer where I can do all of the healing and not have to worry about which part of the image is on which layer and where do I have to jump to fix it.
Yep. Yes. Well, hopefully GIMP continues to improve so they can get that whole thing resolved and you won't have to worry about that anymore. Remember we were talking about how things have gotten better in Linux that, if you didn't... So think about it in that sense that at some point you can say, well, we won't have to worry about that no more.
They're working on it. They are really working on it. The people who make GIMP do a fantastic job, and I'm so excited to see the stuff that they come up with this year. They did amazing stuff last year, some great improvements, and I can't wait to see what they've got coming.
Yep. So is there any software that's not currently available in Linux that you would like to see come to Linux?
Nothing that I particularly use. I know I'd like to see some additional features in maybe like Inkscape, because I've bought in certain products and they only have a Adobe version. And so you can open some Adobe products in Inkscape, but it would be nice to have the flexibility to open more. Photopea, however you pronounce it, has been awesome for being able to open some of that stuff that Inkscape can't. But for the most part, everything I need runs just fine on Linux. My husband plays a few games, and I know that sometimes mainly the kids, because they like the Lego games, can get frustrated because mom's got to figure out what I need to change or fix or manipulate to make some of their games work. But nothing's a major issue.
Right. Are you a gamer at all, Wendy?
I lightly play every now and again. I like to play Truck Simulator Zeb style. I don't crash into caravans, but we were definitely like full-blown speeding, passing in the emergency lane, just
having fun.
Having a blast that way. I can take out all of my aggression with other drivers in that game and not have to worry about it.
That's putting the game to good use.
Absolutely.
So have you ever walked into Best Buy, Wendy, and installed Linux on their computers? No?
I haven't. But I've sat there looking at them going, man, I wish I really could boot into the BIOS and see what it looks like and see what I might need to change to put Linux on here.
Just need to get the kids to occupy the salespeople on the floor long enough.
Yeah, the thing is, if I told them to go make noise, they'd look at me like, holy crap, what happened to our mom? You want us to do what?
Yep. Well, Wendy, you've been around the community for long enough to help people and answer questions. There's a lot of people out there who feel they can't contribute to Linux or the community. But everybody has something to give to the community, to Linux itself, even if they don't think they do. So what would you say to people who are looking to help or looking to contribute in some way?
Sometimes helping out is just answering questions. There's a distribution you love, you know a lot about it, you've been using it for a while, you are a great resource to help new people answer questions. And
Yep.
sometimes that's all a distribution needs. Sometimes they just need somebody to test things. You like to hop, you like to play with the new stuff. They need testers. So there's always little niches that you can do to help out in any of the communities. You just have to ask. And most of the people running the distributions are more than happy to give you a job to help out. And if you're new, if you're just learning stuff, if you don't even know what to do yet, most of them are more than happy to help guide you in figuring out how to do whatever tasks need done. They don't need seasoned professionals. They just need people who enjoy Linux to step in and say, "Hey, I've got 5 minutes. What can I do?"
Yep. Well, I think that's another thing that has changed for the better, to where you can look around at the communities, whether it be Ubuntu Mate or whether it be Ubuntu, or look at any of the communities, and the leadership in those communities is so approachable and so willing to answer questions. And it wasn't always that way. And maybe that wasn't because of the specific people in leadership. It was just, we have come such a long way in communication that it's got to that point where there isn't, well, I won't say there isn't a distribution out there, but most distributions out there is exactly what you're talking about, where you can just go and ask questions. How can I help? And you'll get plenty of answers on how to help.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean they need help, especially on some of the smaller distributions where there's only a few people working on it full time after they get done with the other stuff. That they would love for anybody to just step in and say, "Yeah, we've got a laundry list of things that need done," even if it's posting onto this board that we have an update, right? There's a million things that they could always use help with that doesn't take a lot of skill. Just somebody who's got 5 minutes and a willingness to do it.
Yep. Now, that's the key, willingness to do it. And I think there's
Yeah.
always a way.
It can be overwhelming sometimes to you hear these names of people that are leaders in distros, and they become not necessarily superheroes, but, these idols. There's these people that are doing things, and they're so fantastic, and sometimes we can feel a little overwhelmed in approaching them, but they're people like us.
Yep.
They're just
And
people like us.
I think that's what is the most important part of Biddle to me, is bridging
Mhm.
that gap between the regular user and the people that are behind developing it. And I think at we've come to that point where, again, there isn't many distributions out there that you won't get an answer from. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
super important.
And those are some of my favorite ones when the people who made the distro are there commenting as people are giving their comments, and you can find out some of the reasoning behind why they did that. Or Ali, when we tried Trinity, he'd never been on before, and then, he was a regular part of the community in multiple ways. It's so great to bring the people developing and the people using together
Yep.
so that ideas can mingle and merge, and things just get better that way.
And I think the people, like developers don't always know what to expect when they join Biddle. But I think most of them come away with a good feeling about it and seeing things that maybe they didn't see before. So I think that's a good thing on both ends.
Well, for the most part, the people who join Biddle on a regular week are not going to just trash something to trash it. They typically have really constructive criticism. This is what I was trying to do. It didn't work. This is what I tried to fix it. I got really frustrated. And that gives the developer somewhere to go. Then I just didn't like it.
Yep. Agreed.
That helps nobody. That is not positive feedback in any way. It doesn't help anybody. I didn't like it. Okay.
Nope. That doesn't do anything. So, do you believe that Linux is bad at marketing?
Yeah.
I know that that's the whole thing has been going around where, are we bad at marketing? Are we not bad at marketing? Is it something maybe that the term is wrong? Maybe we should just be promoting it instead of marketing it? Or do we need that marketing aspect of it?
I think in some way you do need a marketing aspect of it. If people aren't seeing it on a regular basis, they don't know it's there. So, I mean, and it's just with everything. You can look at an ad 5 or 6 or 7 times and look over it a million times. You can hear Linux 100 different times and still not even know that it was there. And just hearing the name Linux doesn't help people who are new come to Linux because they still have no idea what it is. If it wasn't for the fact when I found it that I was actively looking for a replacement to what I had, it would still mean nothing to me.
Right. Well, I think we touched on it earlier that some people, look, let's not like sugarcoat it. I know that not everybody's going to run Linux. I get that.
Right.
Most people don't even care. But there is a set of people out there that just don't realize there are other options. And I think that's where the marketing comes in.
Yeah. Showing that there are other options. And while, yes, some things are different, you can't install that exe file. The file name is different, which can be hard for some people to get around. You can still get your stuff done, and this is what it has to offer you, and it might be a better platform for what you're trying to do. And not everyone needs to install it themselves. Having places like System 76 that can sell somebody a fully functioning Linux laptop so they can have an out-of-the-box experience, I think is fantastic. And I wish that there was a way to give them a national marketing budget. So after that horrible Windows ad that drives me nuts, there could be a System 76 ad that follows it. Like, yay!
Agreed. Definitely. Well, I mean, Dell actually has been making a push for, Linux computers as well. So that's also a good thing, especially for a huge company like Dell. So, all right. If you could change one thing about Linux, what would it be?
I don't know. I honestly don't know what I would change.
Well, then there must be nothing you wanted to change in Linux. It must be perfect.
It's perfect for me. Perfect.
That's great. I love it. So, you had reasons you wanted to get away from Windows. Obviously, you don't want to get away from Windows today because you're already away from it. But those reasons that you chose to try Linux and to use Linux, do they still apply today?
My reasonings for using Linux are completely different because before I just wanted away from this thing that was driving me nuts and making it hard to use my hardware. And now I use Linux because I enjoy it. It gets the job done. It stays out of my way. I can sit down at my computer. I know exactly what's going to happen when I start it up. I know where my windows are opening. It's part of my day now. It's just part of how things work. And I don't see the need to change it up because, right? It's perfect for me. Do we need the heart back?
We need the heart back.
We need the heart
back. But Wendy, I know exactly what's going to happen when I boot into Windows 10. I know that it's going to look for updates. I know that it's going to want to download new drivers. I know that every program that I have is going to want to update that can automatically update, especially when you're talking games. At the same time. So, yeah, I don't see the problem here.
See, and that's all stuff that's frustrating. It's not getting out of my way. It's not just letting me use my computer. It's not just letting me get my work done. If I'm having to let things load, one of the worst things for me is my computer would constantly slow down with Windows. You'd get the whatever lag and have to defrag and on all of this extra work just to keep your system running. Now I run an update like once a week. Woo!
Well, over the years, you were trained that was just normal. Like all of those things that you had to do was just normal. And, when you come over to Linux, I don't have to do that? I don't have to go find an exe file?
Yes.
Well, I will say that I have another hard drive in the computer, and it has a Windows partition on it for the only reason to be able to play certain games that can't run on Linux because of anti-cheat or whatever, because, the newer FPS shooters or whatever. And there's no lie, that's why I loved Ballistic Overkill, because you could just get in and play. I booted to Windows to play, say, Call of Duty. No lie, I have to wait for the updates. I have to download another NVIDIA driver before I can play. I then got to wait for whatever it may be, the client Steam or Battle.net or whatever to update. Then I got to wait for the game to update. Then once it says you can hit play, you hit play, and then inside the game, there's another update that you thought you were updating before is now updating, and now you got to restart the game again. It is so frustrating at times. It almost...
So do you turn on your computer, go make dinner, and then come back?
Well, no, because you can't, because you have to interact with it. Like, you have to say, okay, install the NVIDIA drivers, and now you got to say, do you want it to be the customized or the whatever it is, the fast, whatever it is. And then once that's done, then you have to, actually start the update process, because like you said, you can't do all of it at once or you'd be there forever. And it's very frustrating, almost to the point where you don't want to play those games anymore, but I haven't got there yet.
So you don't play them as often because you don't want to start. Yeah, that would be frustrating. I love the fact that I can just open up a terminal, update, let it run, and walk away and go do something else.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, these are the prices you pay.
Very true. Well, and the frustrating thing is sometimes you have hardware and the only way to update the firmware on that hardware is through a Windows program.
Yep.
So sometimes you just can't get away from it. And it's not Linux's fault. That's the manufacturer of whatever product.
Yep. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. I recently got a wireless headset, and I've tried a couple different wireless headsets, and like this SteelSeries headset works perfect in Linux, and it works perfect in Windows. And you really don't even have to install the software if you don't want to, unless you want to change something specific on it. I got a Corsair headset that is a great headset, but in Linux, it only plays sound out of the one ear. In Windows, it's fine, but in Linux, it only plays. And I thought I had fixed it because it started working, and then yesterday I booted into Linux again, and it was only in one ear.
Didn't work anymore.
And that's not, I don't think, a Linux problem. That's a Corsair problem. That's they don't.
That's how they wrote the software for it.
Right. They don't officially support Linux, so it's like they're not keen on fixing it anytime soon. So that one's going back.
Yeah. Well, I know when I bought my mechanical keyboard, I was looking for one that had the backlighting and that I didn't need to boot into Windows to set the lighting the way I wanted to. So my Cooler Master keyboard has the controls for the different lighting built into the keyboard, and I don't have to touch a Windows program to affect the backlighting of it.
Yep.
So I guess I do. Sometimes you do buy certain things because, hey, I'm running it in Linux and I want to make sure that the hardware plays nice with the software.
But that's also a choice, just like using open source software. You choose to do that. You choose to pick hardware that you won't have issues with on Linux.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a great keyboard. Right. If I had to go back and do it again, I'd still get this keyboard because I love it.
Yep.
Well, no, I may not get this keyboard. It's got the blue switches, and so they're really loud. I'd probably go brown.
See, I don't mind the loud switches.
See, I love the loud switches. It's when there's something that needs to be done, and because my computer's in my room.
Mm-hmm.
So my husband's asleep or somebody else is asleep, and you go to type on the keyboard, and those clicks that sound great during the day sound like you're smashing stuff at night.
They do. They do. And if even in this setting, if the mic isn't right or whatever, if you're picking up the background noise, you're going to hear it. How many times do we tell people, mute your mic on Biddle?
Yeah. Yeah. We can hear you typing. The whole world can hear you typing.
Yep. What are you going to do?
Yes.
All right,
absolutely.
Wendy. Is there anything else you want to share with people?
I don't think so. It has been so much fun to visit with you today.
It was an absolutely awesome conversation. I loved it. How can people get in touch with you, Wendy?
Well, right now my website's down. Like I said, I'm making some changes. I have portfolio work to do, but you can either find me on Telegram at the Wendy Power, or you can actually find me on MeWe. I'm hanging out over there. That's the social network that I participate in.
Oh yeah.
I am.
I'll be honest with you. When MeWe came out, I joined right away, and I actually put the Biddle group in MeWe as a group. The reason that I don't use it is because of only one thing, and that was every time, or if you didn't post something in the group, your group got removed automatically. Like if you didn't, I forget what the time limit is, but if you don't post in like 2 days or 3 days or something like that, your group gets removed. And it's like, so every week I'm getting this email saying the Biddles group's being removed because you haven't posted. So I post something and then, okay, you're getting removed. So I stopped using it. But other than that, it was fine. But okay. Yeah. Well, we'll have to, you'll give me a link for that for your MeWe, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I can send you a link to that.
Awesome. Well, Wendy, I want to thank you so much for not just talking to me, but what you do in the community. You're always willing to help out in the Telegram groups. When Destination Linux decides, somebody's not going to show up, we're going to pull Wendy in real quick. You're always willing to help out, and I really appreciate what you do for the community.
Well, thank you. I have honestly so much fun doing it that it's a pleasure.
Awesome. All right, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us this week as we spotlight the best thing about Linux, our community. Until next time, long live Linux. Are you ready?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, you just froze. Now you just unfroze. Okay.
We'll just do it over, that's all.
Go with the flow.
Going with the flow. That's all we can do. I get my line here because I don't want to mess that up. Welcome to the Linux Spotlight. This show is dedicated to showing off the best thing about Linux, our community. This community is made up of developers, distro maintainers, YouTubers, and everyday users. Each one plays a vital role in our community. And the goal is to have a discussion. I better do that over.